our topic is the inclusion of NGOs in Sofielund's bid. And we are Baltasar, Matish, Izana, Judith, and Jessica, and me. We will present our design idea and process to you. And I will start with the background, actors, our object of worry, a little bit tell you about our research process, and then start with our roadmap with the invitation. Jessica will go more into detail with the open house and also our scenarios for the future. So we started with a field trip to Sofielund, where we met Hjalmar, who presented the bid to us in Sofielund, and told us a little bit about the challenge of participation already. So we found that very interesting already, and conducted some further research with a literature review on the concept of bids. What is that? How does it work? Also, we did some interviews and also some walks, one by day and one by night, just to see is it really that dangerous and how does it feel to be there? How does it look like? There you can see like 2 of our pictures. We of course have some more. And we had a closer look at the actors, who is there in Sofielund and who's in the bid. So we have the bid in the middle is the board. We have Malmö Star, who initiated the bid with Hjalmar, the one who's in striped shirt. We also have, of course, the businesses, the landlords and the landowners, the citizens of Malmö or of Sofielund. We also have NGOs, architects, academia, of course, who, for example, is us, but also studies of criminology and health departments here in Malmö, which we also read, who already did some research on Sofielund. Also the press, and influence of other bid concepts on the bid in Sofielund. So what bid usually stands for is a business improvement district, but the one in Sofielund changed to citizens or inhabitants integration and participation. So they actually have a focus on citizen participation, but when we looked at it, we saw that we have indeed public and private actors. So we have the city of Malmö, which is basically Hjalmar, and we also have public and private landowners included. But what we don't really have are NGOs in the bid. So Hjalmar told us that there are over 100 NGOs in Sofielund, but only 2 of them are included as bid members. So this is also our object of worry, that we say the bid in Sofielund lacks in inclusion of citizens of NGOs. More specifically, a lack of transparency, because we say the NGOs are not really informed what is going on when the bid started, what is happening, what we call the lack of integrity, since the bid in Sofielund states in its document that it doesn't only want to focus on businesses as other bid concepts do, but also on participation, but it doesn't really happen. And also they miss out on the collaboration potential, because we think it would be beneficial to the bid, to the development of Sofielund, to include citizens and NGOs. So what we think is needed is more infrastructure, because we see a lack in contact between the bid and the NGOs. So, and how we want to do that is by a singing platform, which is starts with an open house, so the different actors can come together and discuss the development of Sofielund. And first of all, we conducted some interviews to see what the people think, what the actors think in Sofielund, what is their insight into the bid, what do they expect, what do they want, what don't they want. So we talked to Hjalmar, and what he told us is that most of the work in the bid is informal due to a lack of resources. So since he's the only one working there, he just doesn't have the time to do everything. So then we talked to 2 NGOs, one who is the member of the bid, which is Hide Krakan, which is a Somali organization. They told us that they of course know about the bid, they have contact to Hjalmar mostly. They're not so much engaged, but it's fine for them. And then we talked to Meteor, which is not in the bid, and they heard of it, they applied for funding for a project, but otherwise they don't really know what the bid is doing, but they seemed very interested and they really wanted to know more, also what other NGOs are there, so they were really interested in also what we are doing. We also talk to, yeah?
What is an NGO?
It's also an NGO. It's an art. It's about art projects, so it's a lot of artists who came together, and they are in Sofielund. Most of them also live in Sofielund. Yeah, we also talked to citizens, of course, on the street. We had a short survey to see what they think. They mostly know Hjalmar too, but they didn't seem too interested in being more engaged in the development. And we talked to one board member, which is HSB Malmö, which is a landowner in Malmö, quite a big one, but they actually don't own any property in Sofielund. But when we made him aware of the issue, he just told us that he didn't really think about it before. He was actually very interested and said it's very important that NGOs are more included. So he also wants to know what's happening afterwards. So our plan is to invite NGOs to an open house, or more specifically, let Hjalmar invite them. And we have a list of Hjalmar, which is like, I think 100 NGOs or a bit more. So we would use that list to invite the NGOs to the open house and also have it as an open invitation. So because we can't know if we know all the NGOs in the area, so we would ask the NGOs on the list to forward the email or the invitation to other organizations they know. And we also would have a semi-structured agenda already sent out to them, but not a structured one because we didn't talk to all the NGOs. We only talked to 2, so we don't really know what is the struggle, what do they want to talk about. So we want to leave it open to them. So we don't want to put something on to them, but yeah, they have to change it. They have to say what do they want to develop, and so on. And we also want to publish that list of NGOs online, so NGOs can add a description. What are they doing? Also, it can be updated in the future for the NGOs because at least Anna from Meteor told us that she doesn't really know what NGOs are there in Sofielund, but she would be very interested also for some collaboration between NGOs. And of course, we also came across some challenges regarding the invitation already. So one of our aims is to unburden Hjalmar because he can't do everything by himself. So since he has to send out the invitations, that creates more work for him again. But it's not so much since the list of NGOs already exists, and also the invitations are at a low cost since it's email. And also he doesn't have to do what he does right now, one-on-one meetings with the NGOs, but he reach them all at once. Also, we don't want the event or the invitations to be exclusive. We don't want to settle a scale or something, but we want to make it as inclusive as possible. So all the NGOs who are in Sofielund and everyone, even the ones we don't know yet. But of course, since Hjalmar does it, it's a bit Hjalmar-centric, at least in the beginning. But we say it's definitely possible that the NGOs can take over in the future. And now Jessica will tell you more about our open house idea.
The second large component of our prototype. I'll give you a little story of how this open house would happen. So maybe 2 weeks from now, Hjalmar sends out an invite telling people of the open house event that's to happen in 2 weeks' time. And the way it would be set out is that you can imagine people are at work during the day, they're coming home around 4:30 or 5. They have time to go home, walk their dog, feed their kids, and then they can slowly make their way to the open house at Garaget. They start there with half an hour of open fika time, plenty of opportunity for infrastructuring between the NGOs, just an informal space for them to connect. Followed at 7 o'clock by a welcome by either Hjalmar or an NGO rep, or both potentially. And then one of the features of the event would be an information presentation about the bid, since finding out from Anna that many of the NGOs don't know too much about the bid as of yet. The main portion of the open house, though, would be dedicated to a conversation between the NGOs attending. So we envision this process for them to first set out what topics are important for them to discuss, secondly, have an open discussion, and lastly, synthesize a document that can later be given back to the bid board. And at the end, in order to provide more opportunity for scaling, infrastructuring, and formal connections, we would have just more fika time. Very important because we're in Sweden. And at the bottom there, you'll see the high budget option. We've added the option of having childcare, so this would involve more costs, but I think it's very important because we noticed that there might be a lot of NGO representatives with young families, and if they had childcare, it would be an incentive for them to come, but it would also be an enabler so that they wouldn't have to, again, pay private childcare costs, make more arrangements for that sort of thing. In terms of challenges, we've discussed them in the same themes. So first, unburdening Hjalmar, we imagine, again, just like the email, with an open house, he's going to be able to communicate what the bid does to a large group of NGOs, as well as answer their questions instead of having to organize one-on-one meetings. But the challenge is, again, he's organizing the meeting because he has the list. From a funding perspective, so Garaget is free. Of course, with the high budget option, you're kind of paying double for fika and childcare. But if the EU grant does come through, that's potential funding. In terms of governance, we believe that Hjalmar's involvement gives this event legitimacy instead of having this organized by maybe a lone NGO sending an invite to other NGOs. But again, having his name on the invite and having him give a bid presentation, we do acknowledge that we're putting him in the spotlight again and making this bid process very Hjalmar-centric. From the perspective of scaling, we believe that one of the positive aspects of this event is that by having the NGOs kind of decide their own agenda, decide who they're forwarding the invite to, deciding how they use their fika time before and after, that this creates their ownership over the event, or allows them to take ownership over the event should they choose to. But again, their lack of active involvement potentially in the invitation process and in the organizing of the event might limit their incentive to further act. We envision 3 scaling scenarios, and we've rated them based on the challenges discussed. So the first challenge or goal that we would want to increase within the bid is transparency, the second, integrity, and lastly, the collaboration potential. So the first scenario ranks the lowest in terms of transparency, integrity, and collaboration potential. The top arrow you see there is the bid one-on-one presentation. So the bid is giving information to the NGOs, which we think is positive. The discussion synthesis from the open house, you see as the second arrow, information coming from the NGO to Hjalmar. The last arrow you see that we have no NGO board representatives. So again, there's not this constant contact. The NGOs don't have voting representation on the board. And there is potential that the NGOs choose not to organize or they're too tired to organize. So we do acknowledge that is a risk and a potential scenario. In scenario B, we believe we could see an increased amount of transparency. So potentially the NGOs have formed an organization, and the main differences here being instead of just one-way communication or single points in time of communication between Hjalmar and the bid in terms of those events, those communications happening at the open house, we envision that they could have ongoing updates going between them. So the meeting minutes from the board being sent to the NGOs and the NGOs organization sending their meeting notes to the bid. The last scenario is potentially the best scenario in what we saw, increasing transparency, integrity, and collaboration potential. So similar to the other options, we have the bid presentation and we have the discussion synthesis from the NGO discussion going to the bid. We have the ongoing updates. We have the NGO organization. But finally, in the last area, you'll see there the NGO board representation. So we envision that maybe 1 or 2 NGOs are represented on the bid board, therefore giving them the ability to vote as well as be involved in that kind of closed discussion that really is quite, that lacks transparency right now. There are no minutes kind of published. The only people who really know what's going on fully are the people who would have been attending the meeting. So we believe that this would have a very high potential of increasing transparency, integrity, and collaboration. And so a future scenario that we envisioned, we'll tell through a story. So we imagine that in the future, maybe 1 year from now, the EU funding that the bid has applied for has been received, an NGO organization has been formed. Anna from Meteor is part of the organization. Rebike, the used bike sales company, is also part of that group. Hideo Dakan is also part of that group. And Anna and the others are at an NGO meeting, and they receive an email. And they're going through the updates from the bid board. It says, okay, the bid board had a meeting 2 weeks ago, and they've just received EU funding, and they've decided to make a grant available for art funding, art and transportation funding. So Rebike and Anna from Métis are saying this is a great opportunity to incorporate active mobility and art into the community. And they open the form, they start to look at the requirements, and they realize that something on the form is actually going to make it impossible for them to be able to apply for the funding. But since this is a draft form and it's been sent to the organization for comment, at the next board meeting and through email, they're able to inform the bid board that they do need to change part of their forms in order to cut red tape and allow for the funding to be available to the NGOs. The form is updated, they send another draft, it's finalized, and in the end, the Rebike and Métis are allowed to collaborate and apply for EU funding and play an active role in their community. And so we envision this as a potential story of the future, and one that we are quite hopeful for. And with that, we conclude our presentation.